We're here with Senator John Kennedy, a Republican from Louisiana. Senator, thank you for being with Bloomberg. I want to ask you about your vote yesterday on net neutrality. You were one of 3 Republicans to join Democrats in their vote. Why did you decide that?
There were good arguments on both sides. Here's why I decided that. Under the 2017 order, a cable company or an internet service provider is allowed to throttle or block or discriminate if the internet service provider declares it, tells the consumer, hey, here's what I'm about to do, then you can do it. And the argument was made, okay, if an internet service provider does that, blocks, censors, slows it down, offers a fast lane and you don't want to use it, then all you have to do is switch internet service providers. But it's not that simple. 19% of all Americans and 22% of all Louisianians have access to only one internet service provider that can download at 25 megabits per second and upload at 3, which is the minimum speed that the FCC recommends. And I just didn't think it was fair.
Is your party wrong on this?
Well, I'm not going to say, I'll never say my colleague was wrong to do this or that. I mean, I disagree with some of my colleagues. I don't see this as a Republican or a Democratic issue. I'll make a couple of other points, though. Number one, I believe that people should be able to write what they want to, say what they want to, download what they want to on the internet without getting the permission of the cable company. I do. You know, when you sign up for a telephone, the telephone company can't tell you who you can call, and the telephone company can't tell you what you can say when you call them, and I think the internet ought to be the same way. Now, we need legislation. This issue has ping-ponged back and forth 6 times in 10 years. And if a Democrat becomes president again at some point, it'll ping-pong again. And all of my colleagues say, oh, we need a bill, we need a bill. Nobody does a damn thing. You know, it's kind of like going to heaven. Everybody says, well, I want to go to heaven, but they're not ready to take the trip. Okay, well, we need to go pass a bill on this thing so we can have some certainty.
Well, speaking of bipartisan bills, you have one with Senator Amy Klobuchar regarding big tech companies. And yesterday, Mr. Wiley testified before the committee that you're on. What did you make of his testimony yesterday, and what do you make of the prospects of your legislation with Senator Klobuchar?
I learned a little bit from Mr. Wiley about what went on inside Cambridge Analytica. We didn't have enough time. I would have liked more time to address the larger issue, which is that it is undeniable that certain social media platforms, one being Facebook, but it's not the only one, these platforms have the ability to influence what we believe, how we vote, what we buy, how we feel. And that fact needs to be disclosed in a clear and unmistakable manner to consumers. And then if the consumers want to proceed, that's up to them.
Quick follow-up, are there any new plans to have CEOs of any other tech companies testify in the coming months?
I hope so. I mean, this is the privacy issue and what I call the propaganda issue. We can all agree that poison is being spread on the internet. That's easy. The problem is defining poison. You get off into First Amendment issues. I would like to hear from the tech industry. I don't want to regulate them half to death. And in the regulation that we do attempt, I would like the social media companies to weigh in and say this will work and this won't work, and let's solve this together.
Senator, final question for you with regards to China, because that is dominating so much of President Trump's time, especially this week with Chinese Vice Premier Liu Hua meeting with President Trump today. Are you concerned about the potential for a trade war with China, and what are you hearing from folks back in your state?
Well, look, the China issue, there are 2 sub-issues right now. Number 1 is trade. Number 2 is North Korea. I think that China completely controls North Korea. I think if you took President Xi Jinping and turned him upside down and shook him, Kim Jong-un would fall out of his pocket. And I honestly believe that that you can't negotiate with Korea without negotiating with China. In terms of the trade, look, this is the bottom line. China at one time was an emerging economy. You expect an emerging economy to have higher tariffs. But China's no longer an emerging economy. It's arrived. It's the second biggest economy in the world. Its tariffs are 3 times higher than American tariffs. And on top of that, they steal our intellectual property. Now, I don't want to get in a trade war. I don't think the president wants to get in a trade war. I think he understands the only way to win a trade war is don't fight the damn thing. But having said that, China has got to revise its policies if we're going to have any sort of fair trade.
I know we have to wrap, but you did mention it. I just have to ask about ZTE then. Do you think that has to do with North Korea, or what are your thoughts?
I think it's part of larger negotiations. I personally am not going to buy a ZTE telephone. I'm not going to buy a telephone from Huawei. I'm not saying they're not well made, but they're controlled by the Chinese government, the Communist Party. I buy American.
Is President Trump right on that then?
I don't know whether he's right or wrong yet. I just think that he didn't wake up one day and say, I'm going to change my mind on ZTE. I think this is part of larger trade negotiations, and we ought to allow the president to finish.
Thank you, Senator.